Some movements in the sky are visible, others you only feel like a weight shifting inside of you. And today, something invisible changes everything. Neptune moves, and when Neptune changes signs, nothing in the spiritual realm remains the same. Certainties crumble, plans tremble, and even faith must redefine itself. This is not an ordinary day. It is the instant when the universe erases the blind impulse and returns power to the soul. The kind of power that doesn't scream, but transforms everything around it. If you feel that something is rearranging itself, both inside and out, then this call is for you. Go to the comments now and write, "I walk without fear." Because this sentence is not an idea. It is a silent vow between you and the invisible. Neptune leaves Aries, and with it departs the need to control the uncontrollable. Today, courage is surrender. For years, humanity believed that strength was synonymous with movement, to act, to run, to conquer, as if time were an enemy and silence a threat. But the sky now is correcting this distortion. Neptune changes direction, and with it, the very concept of power begins to unravel. The energy of Aries has always demanded action, but Neptune has never been a planet of speed. It works in dissolution, not in conquest. And that is why, when it leaves the territory of fire, the universe begins to slow the pulse of the collective rush. Suddenly, everything that was urgent loses its strength. Hasty plans drag on, forced results fall apart, and the body feels it, as if the internal clock stopped to remember. The rhythm of the soul is not that of the clock. This is the moment when the universe teaches the value of acting with consciousness, because to act without listening to your own field is to waste vital energy. How many times have you pushed something because it had to happen, while deep down you knew it wasn't the right time? How many times have you called progress what was, in fact, a fear of stopping? Neptune is the tide that drags away the excess. And when it changes signs, the first impulse is to resist, to try to continue what was being done. But the spiritual flow is no longer there. It has moved. And to insist is to row against a tide that no longer exists. The end of the rush is not paralysis, it is precision. It is learning to feel the exact moment when the universe pushes, and the moment when it asks for silence. The difference between a blessed movement and a useless one lies in listening for the right time. And the right time is not what the world says, it is what your field feels. This slowdown is not a punishment, it is a realignment. The universe is repositioning your energy so that when you act, the gesture carries spiritual weight. Because haste generates volume, but it does not create a legacy. Neptune comes to teach that power is not in how many times you try, but in the purity of intention with which you make each attempt. There is a silent phrase hovering in the air during this transit. Nothing needs to be pushed when it is true. And perhaps this is the key to everything that will come in the following weeks. The right paths do not demand inhuman strength. They simply ask for presence. The right action flows, the wrong one tires. And when you find yourself too tired of trying, it is a sign that the movement has already lost its purpose. The universe is now separating effort from sacrifice. One expands, the other drains. One is born from the soul, the other from fear. And what Neptune wants to show is simple. Those who know when to stop, multiply energy. Those who do not, waste it. If you feel the call to slow down, do not fight it. Breathe. Understand that stopping is also a way of acting. When silence becomes strategy and not giving up. This is the spiritual training of the moment. Do not react. Do not push. Do not chase. The tide is returning to the invisible, and whatever is real, it will bring back on its own. Neptune does not destroy what is false. It simply withdraws the energy that sustained it. And that is why, as it moves away from Aries, many people begin to feel as if control is slipping through their fingers. Plans that seemed solid weaken, strategies are lost, and even confidence in certain structures begins to waver. What is happening is not ruin, it is disillusionment. And spiritually, that is a blessing. When the illusion of control shatters, the truth appears naked, without props. And for the first time, you can see what truly moved your decisions in recent years. Fear, the need for validation, and urgency for security. Now none of that works. The power born of the ego needs constant control, vigilance, and effort. It demands that you always be in command, always reacting, always planning. But true spiritual power demands none of this. It is silent, and for that very reason, it is unshakable. False power is based on the idea that the world can be manipulated. Real power is born when you understand that the world responds, it does not obey. This is Neptune's test. What happens when you stop pushing? The things that were destined for you continue to move. Those that depended only on your strength cease to exist. It is a natural, energetic sorting, done without violence, but with absolute precision. Therefore, to resist this movement is the same as trying to hold water in your hands. The more you try to maintain the old forms, the faster they dissolve. And the sense of loss that comes with it is not punishment. It is purification. You are being returned to the essence of your power, the one that does not depend on control, but on coherence. At this point, many feel confusion because the ego interprets the universe's silence as abandonment. But in fact, it is the opposite. It is trust. When the invisible stops pushing you, it is because it wants to see what you have learned to sustain on your own. It is the same as what a master does with an apprentice. He steps back to test if the student has mastered their own center. And now the universe is doing that with you. Everything that was created out of fear begins to lose its strength. Businesses, relationships, commitments, and even ideals that were born only to avoid the void will reveal themselves to be fragile. But what was born of faith and purpose will remain, even if it needs to change its form. Neptune is the filter of the soul, and what does not pass through it was not yours to begin with. When false power falls, what remains is a space, and this space is uncomfortable because the ego hates the void. But the void is the first step of creation. Before any birth, there is always a silence. Before manifestation, there is always the invisible reorganizing itself. What you call an end is, almost always, the soul clearing the ground. Therefore, do not try to save what is falling apart. The universe is not punishing you. It is freeing you from that which is already ended. Dissolution is the highest form of cosmic mercy. It clears the path so that real power can, finally, manifest. From now on, do not confuse stability with control. Stability will come from surrender, and control, as always, will only be a reflection of fear. When you stop confusing movement with dominion, you will discover the true state of strength, the one that needs to prove nothing, only to sustain what is. Not every withdrawal is a defeat. Some are repositionings planned by the universe itself. Neptune returns to Pisces until January 2026, and this interval is not a setback, it is a revision. The cosmos is gathering the excess, clearing the field, so that the new cycle can begin with real purpose. Often, before a collective advancement, there is a movement of individual withdrawal, and that is what is happening now. The world is being trained to abandon the need to prove and return to the need to understand. The difference is subtle, but it changes everything. Proving is an action aimed at the ego. Understanding is an action guided by the soul. This period may seem strange, as if everything you started begins to slow down. Plans stall, ideas lose momentum, even enthusiasm wavers. But none of this is a sign of failure. It is the energetic field asking you to review your intentions. The universe no longer wants meaningless effort. It wants direction. It wants you to know why you are moving and what you truly want to sustain when the next wave begins. Over the next few months, life will show you what is too heavy. Commitments, roles, and even emotional stances that once seemed unavoidable will begin to feel burdensome, and the weight is always the first sign that something has already fulfilled its purpose. Neptune, with its dissolving nature, will withdraw energy from what no longer vibrates at the right frequency. This may manifest as unexpected pauses, misalignments, cancellations, or forced changes. But in reality, everything is organizing itself so that the path, once again, has space for the essential. This is the essence of the strategic withdrawal. The universe is reducing noise. And while this happens, the ego tries to react. It fears the silence, fears the pause, fears the loss. But what the ego calls a void is, in fact, the interval between the old and the inevitable. This space is where new consciousness is formed, where the next step takes invisible shape before becoming reality. Therefore, the spiritual challenge now is not to fill the silence with distractions, not to rush to replace what has been removed, nor to blame yourself for having to pause. There is a reason for the doors to close. Neptune needs space to reorganize the internal tide before launching the next wave. And if you try to force an opening during this phase, the universe will only amplify the resistance. This cosmic movement teaches an ancient lesson. Those who retreat at the right time advance with double the precision. The pause is not a punishment, it is an adjustment of aim. The spiritual field is doing this with you now, adjusting your direction before rekindling the fire. Everything that is being collected is energy that will be returned later, but purified. During this transition, the most powerful practice is not doing, it is observing. Observing what falls apart without guilt and what insists on remaining even without effort. The second category is where your truth lies. What remains standing after Neptune is what has spiritual structure and not just form. This is the difference between the path and the detour. The path may seem slow, but it has coherence. The detour is loud, urgent, and falls apart quickly. In the coming months, you will learn to recognize this without needing to break anything, just by feeling. The strategic withdrawal is a vote of confidence from the universe. It is not taking you out of the scene. It is repositioning you. It is returning to you the power to act with purpose, without noise, without waste. And when Neptune finally returns to Aries, only those who have learned to withdraw with wisdom will be able to act with spiritual authority. The lesson is simple, but profound. Nothing that requires constant force to exist is in harmony with the whole. And what is in harmony never needs to be sustained by force. Neptune does not demand faith, it reveals it, and the difference is subtle but decisive. When you have to force belief, you are still trying to control the invisible. When you feel it, it is already present, like a silent breath behind every event. It is this invisible layer of reality that now begins to become visible to those who are awake. The spiritual world does not prove itself, it manifests. And what is about to manifest in this cycle is not a spectacle. It is coherence. Everything you truly vibrate, even without words, begins to take shape. Everything you pretend to believe dissolves. This is the essence of Neptune's power. It separates the spiritual from the theatrical. In recent years, many people have confused faith with performance. They turn the invisible into discourse, silence into content. But Neptune is not interested in appearances. It is filtering the field for those who live what they say. Faith now is not decorative, it is functional. It serves to sustain presence within the chaos, to maintain the axis when the world wavers. The new faith is not one that waits for miracles, it is the one that creates stability in the midst of uncertainty. It is the kind of faith that doesn't need a promise, only coherence. When everything around loses meaning, it is what anchors. It is the simple act of following what is right, even when no one else understands. This is the new power, not reacting to fear, nor obeying doubt. If the mind asks for proof, the heart offers signs, and these signs are everywhere. In casual conversations, repeated coincidences, memories that suddenly return. They are not random events, they are vibrational alignments trying to confirm that the path is opening. But there is one condition: you only notice them when you slow down your judgment. The hurried gaze does not see synchronicity, only noise. And Neptune, more than any other planet, works with symbolic language. It speaks through what the ego calls coincidence, and the spirit recognizes as an answer. What this transit demands is disciplined faith. Not the blind faith that ignores reality, but the lucid faith that accepts that the invisible is also real. While Mars and Mercury still insist on reasoning and impulse, Neptune teaches that intuition is a form of intelligence, and whoever learns to balance these forces will master the art of acting with purpose without losing sensitivity. There is a kind of strength the world does not understand, the strength of one who trusts the right timing. This strength is not visible, but it moves everything. It is the kind of energy that changes destinies without needing a fight. And this is what Neptune is returning now, the capacity to transform through faith. Perhaps you feel the field is quieter or the mind more scattered, but this apparent chaos is just the ego trying to reorganize itself within a larger space. The soul has already understood what is happening. It recognizes the dissolution and knows that every disorder is a realignment. The challenge is to sustain serenity until the meaning appears. This is the point where many give up. When there is no immediate sign, fear tries to retake command. But it is precisely there that faith matures, not when everything goes right, but when you continue even without a guarantee. This is the spiritual power the sky is asking for now, the power of stable trust. The universe is silent, not because it has forgotten you, but because it wants to see how much of your faith was real. Whoever remains firm during the absence of answers will receive the kind of clarity that is not learned with words, only with surrender. And when the tide returns, you will realize that everything that seemed empty was, in fact, a field being prepared to flourish. The faith that sustains is the bridge between the visible and the invisible, and whoever learns to walk it now will no longer need certainties, only presence. Every spiritual change begins with the sensitives. They are the first to perceive when something changes in the air, even before the mind understands what is happening. And now, with Neptune in motion, this sensitivity is amplified. But contrary to what many think, this is not a burden. It is a spiritual privilege disguised as discomfort. The most connected will feel their body react before their consciousness. Sleep changes, emotions fluctuate, the environment seems denser or lighter than usual. This is all part of the fine-tuning that Neptune imposes when preparing a new cycle. The body, the mind, and the energetic field become receiving antennas. And those who have learned to listen to themselves will realize that the answers will no longer come in words, but in sensations. This is the call of the sensitives, to learn to translate the invisible into practical action. The time of abstract mysticism is over. Now it is applied spirituality, feel, interpret, adjust. Neptune asks that every intuition be validated by coherence, not by impulse. The gift is not in predicting what is coming, but in perceiving what is being asked for now. The sensitives are the first to be tested because they are the transmitters of the new collective code. They pick up the changes before the world notices, and this can generate confusion, isolation, even exhaustion. But the purpose is different: to anchor a new frequency of consciousness. The function of the sensitive is to perceive the invisible before the rest of humanity is ready to see. And that is why, in this phase, internal silence is so essential. Not to be silent, but to calibrate. The planet's energetic field is being reconfigured, and those who perceive this vibration must avoid two traps: dramatizing what they feel or trying to fix others. The new energy does not ask for saviors, it asks for stabilizers. The role of the sensitives is to be a point of balance, not of interference. The power lies in keeping the frequency clean, even when external chaos tries to distort it. Neptune, upon returning to Pisces, expands collective empathy, but this empathy must be filtered with spiritual discernment. Feeling everything is not the same as absorbing everything. The conscious sensitive observes without carrying, understands without judging, and helps without getting lost in the suffering of others. This is true compassion, that which welcomes but does not dissolve along with it. The coming months will function as a spiritual laboratory. Situations and people that test your emotional limits will appear not to weaken you, but to teach you to differentiate intuition from interference. The immature sensitive feels and reacts. The awakened sensitive feels and understands. The difference lies in who maintains their center when the field vibrates stronger. Therefore, this transit is not a punishment. It is a training. The universe is transforming sensitivity into a tool, not a vulnerability. The gift of feeling deeply comes with the responsibility of not getting lost in the waves of others. And the secret is simple. The more you anchor yourself in truth, the less the chaos affects you. Neptune works with subtle vibrations, and it is in the small choices that this attunement is maintained. The music you listen to, the words you repeat, the people with whom you exchange energy, all of this feeds or contaminates the field. And the sensitive knows that the environment is part of the spiritual body. Therefore, now is the time to clear sounds, spaces, and relationships, not out of fear, but for vibrational hygiene. To be sensitive is to live in tune with the invisible, and that is what makes you a spiritual radar for the new era. But a radar does not chase the signal, it just picks it up. And whoever learns this difference will move through the chaos with stability, even when the entire world is in noise. This is the role of the sensitives in this transition: to maintain the axis, sustain the field, and transform perception into presence. What seemed like weakness is now the new form of power. All great strength is born from a pause. And the one the universe is promoting now is the kind of pause that redefines the very concept of power. With Neptune ending its movement in Aries and returning to Pisces, fire gives way to water, impulse gives way to intuition, and blind action transforms into wisdom. This transition is not the end of courage, it is its purification, because courage without consciousness becomes stubbornness, And what the cosmos is asking for now is a refined courage, one that does not depend on struggle, but on truth. The strength that will dominate the coming cycles will not come from those who speak the loudest, but from those who sustain silence and clarity amid the noise. True spiritual power is not about conquering the world, but about remaining centered while the world changes its form. This is the point where the warrior becomes the master. And this is what Neptune is silently building within each of us. A clean strength, born from presence, not from urgency. The new power does not scream, does not impose, does not fight for space. It manifests through resonance. People who learn to operate from this vibration will begin to notice something curious. Situations reorganize themselves around them, not because they have control, but because energetic coherence is irresistible. What is true aligns with what vibrates with truth. This is the kind of dominion that is not conquered, it is recognized, and it only appears when the ego stops demanding immediate results. The soul, on the other hand, works long-term. It builds in silence, moves in waves, and only shows itself when the ground is firm enough to sustain the purpose. Therefore, many will feel this moment as a kind of fertile void. Something seems to end, but within the silence, a new rhythm is being born. The universe is inviting you to become a conscious participant in this reconstruction. Everything that has been dissolved so far was not loss, but refinement. Every broken tie, every interrupted project, every certainty that crumbled. All of this made space for a new internal architecture. The power that emerges now is not reactive, it is creative. It does not depend on circumstances, it depends on alignment. And this alignment begins with the choice not to get lost in the external chaos. The new spiritual strength will be discreet, but undeniable. You will recognize those who carry it because these people walk differently, without hurry, without fear, without the need to prove anything. They do not compete. They do not explain themselves. They do not react. They simply know. They know what is theirs and what is not. They know when to act and when to wait. They know that time is on their side, not against them. Neptune is teaching humanity to trust this kind of wisdom. And this trust will become the new axis of collective spiritual power. Because when many stop acting out of fear and start acting out of conscious faith, the Earth's own field changes. The structures of control, political, emotional, energetic, begin to weaken, not because someone tears them down, but because they simply no longer have anything to hold on to. Fear needs attention to exist, and the new power no longer feeds it. This is the turning point. Neptune gathers the excess and returns the essential. It erases the noise so that the soul's voice can be heard again. And what you do in the coming months will determine how you will navigate this new cycle. Either you remain reacting to what is ending, or you prepare to lead what is beginning. True power is not that of one who controls the sea. It is that of one who learns to navigate. And this is the final invitation of this transit, to let the wave move you, but to remain whole within it. Because whoever trusts the flow does not get lost, they expand. Neptune does not take what is true, it only removes what is no longer vibrating in your truth. What seems like an end is, in reality, a deep spiritual cleansing. It is the universe making space for you to return to operating in harmony with the flow, not against it. The strength now is silent, but real. It does not depend on control or speed, only on presence. Whoever understands this will move through this cycle without fear, with feet firm even in the midst of uncertainty. With every step, the invisible responds. And when trust overcomes haste, the impossible begins to happen. If this message found you at the right time, declare in the comments, "I walk without fear," because this is how the new power begins, with a simple act of conscious faith.